When the tide is high, only pebbles show, piled high against the footpath and the wooden breakwaters that stretch out from it like the teeth of a comb. Between the path and the start of the houses, lower than the highest part of the beach, is a strip of tough, short grass. At spring tides or after heavy rain, pools of water break up the green. The road which separates this grass from the start of the houses is rather imaginatively called Seaview Road. At regular intervals along the beach are signs reading, "No cycling at any time. Poop scoop area. Clean it up." Though hardly separated from the coastline sprawl of Worthing, Fethering believes very strongly in its own identity. People from adjacent areas, even as close as Tarring, Ferring or Goring-on-Sea, are reckoned to be, in some imprecise but unarguable way, different. Fethering is its own little world of double-glazed windows and double-glazed minds. Carole Seddon had always planned to retire there. The cottage had been bought as a weekend retreat when she had both a job and a husband, and though now she had neither, she never regretted the investment. Carole had enjoyed working for the Home Office. The feeling of having done something useful with her life fitted the values with which she had grown up, values which at times verged on the puritanical. Her parents had lived a life without frills. Perhaps the only indulgence they had shown her was the slightly frivolous E at the end of her first name. So Carole felt she had earned a virtuous retirement, even though, she could never quite forget, it had come a little earlier than anticipated. Ahead of her, she imagined, until time finally distressed her body beyond repair, lay perhaps 30 years of low-profile life. Her civil service pension was at the generous end of adequate. The mortgage was paid off. There would be no money worries. She would look after herself sensibly, eat sensibly, take plenty of long, sensible walks on the beach, perform a few unheralded acts of local charity for such organisations as the Canine Trust, and be, if not happy, then at least content with her lot. Carole Seddon did not expect any changes in the rest of her life. She had had her steel-grey hair cut sensibly short and protected her pale blue eyes with rimless glasses, which she hoped were insufficiently fashionable ever to look dated. She bought a sensible new Renault, which was kept immaculately clean and regularly serviced, and in which she did a very low mileage. She had also acquired a dog called Gulliver, who was as sensible as a Labrador is capable of being, and she had kitted herself out with a sensible wardrobe, mostly from Marks and Spencer. Her only indulgence was a Burberry raincoat, which was well enough cut not to look ostentatious. If her clothes were older than those usually worn by a woman in her early 50s, they represented sensible planning for the future. Carole was happy to look older than her age. That accorded with the image of benign anonymity she sought. And someone who wished to slip imperceptibly into old age could not have chosen a better environment than Fethering in which to complete the process. As she took her regular walk on the beach before it was properly light that Tuesday morning in early November, these were not, however, the thoughts going through Carole Seddon's brain. They were old thoughts, conclusions she had long ago reached and fixed in her mind. They never required reassessment. But new, disturbing thoughts cut through the early morning sounds, through the hiss of the gunmetal sea, the wheeze of the wind, the resigned complaint of the gulls, the crunch of sand and shingle onto which Carole's sensible gumboots trod. The new thoughts centred round the woman who, the previous day, had arrived to take possession of the house next door. It was called Woodside Cottage, though there wasn't a wood in sight. But then Carole's own house was called High Tor, and it was a good 200 miles to the nearest one of those. That, however, was the way houses were named in Fethering. Despite its high street location, Woodside Cottage had been empty for some time. Buyers were put off by the amount of modernisation the property required. Its former owner, an old lady of universal misanthropy, had been dead for 18 months. Carole's initial neighbour...